All right, this week on the Rouge, White, and Blue, the league is getting bizarre. All right, here's one for you going into the break. All right, without looking it up, how many teams in the CFL right now have a winning record on the road? And of course, bonus points if you could tell me which teams those are and the records.
I can't do any
Coming
of
up
that.
Coming up next. Welcome to the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. I'm Oz Davis. I'm the co-host of the show. Of course, joining me as always is my co-host, Joe Pritchard. Joe, how are you this week on a scale of 1 to Javon Leak?
How about Brady Oliveira?
Nicely done. Nicely done. I should have gone with, how are you this week on a scale of my fantasy football team to Javon Leak? My God. This when does this league end? When does this I don't care about the season, the CFL season. I care about this.
So what? So just a quick aside before we talk about actual football. 12 out of the 14 teams in our league had Vernon Adams.
Really?
12 out of 14. So if you were one of those that had him and Justin McInnes and got basically squat for 2 positions, you're not alone.
I got squat for 3 positions, dude.
It's okay.
I had VA and a couple of receivers.
You needed to lean on Edmonton last week to
have
a good score. And who was going to do that?
Right.
Besides a few Edmonton fans.
Well, I mean, here's Javon Leak. Didn't score a touchdown all season in any aspect of the game after getting the return touchdown called back in week 1. Hadn't scored a touchdown all year. This week, 3 touchdowns. But that's just one example of the insanity in this league. I tell you this. After the games this weekend, I was going through the stats and the homepage, CFL.ca and whatnot. And I was just looking at the standings in this league. Just the standings, not even advanced metrics or anything like this. And this league is nuts, Joe. It's nuts. I can't figure out this season whatsoever now after this week, right? All right, so we're 8 weeks into the season, so that's what, 40%? 40% of the season now? And
for the Bombers, it's 50%.
Oh no, we're 9.
Halfway through.
So it's 9. So it's 45%. Sorry. We've completed 9. So we're almost halfway through the season. Okay. And like I asked at the top of the show, how many teams in the league have winning records on the road? Now, you said you couldn't tell me. Would you like to guess, Joe?
I'm bouncing my head back between 2 or 3.
Okay.
And I'm going to be wildly wrong regardless.
Okay.
I'm just going to say 3. Why not?
Okay. You know what? 1.
Okay.
1. One team has a winning record on the road. And that, of course, is the Montreal Alouettes, 4-0. There are only two other teams with more than one win on the road. Okay. And that's BC and Saskatchewan. Right. I mean, okay. But there's more. Okay, Joe, how about this one? How many teams in this league have, at this point in the season, a positive turnover differential?
I didn't know there was going to be math. What are you doing to me? It's late. It's late at night. Come on.
No, how many teams in the league? This is pick a number. There's no math here.
I say 4.
Okay, you ready for this? 2. Those teams are, after last week, both taking zeros against their opposition. Saskatchewan with a +10 and Montreal with a +6. Everybody else is 0 or under. What is that? How does this happen? Okay. Okay. And here's a good one for you, too. How many teams are undefeated at home?
I'm going to say none because we're on the crazy
Really?
train.
Okay. Well, actually, this one is a bit more normal, but it makes some sense of the standings. BC is one of them, of course. The other two, Calgary and Ottawa. In a year when no one is playing well on the road, the teams that are undefeated are tops, right? Or at least they're, top 2 in their conference, in their division. They could be, except for Calgary. Here's a good one for you. Here's how to pick Calgary games. Calgary is 4-0 at home, 0-4 on the road. Pretty easy for pick'em. Of course, this is the week now. Now that I've gotten onto this trend, this is the week when Calgary wins on the road, right? So I don't know, Joe. I mean, can you make and what is the league appears to be close, right? These divisions are in somewhat close contention. I think there's still at least, 7 viable teams here for 6 spots in the playoffs. Maybe more. I don't know. Probably just the 7. So why do these stats make everything look so top heavy? What's up with these home records?
I guess whoever's had more home games is probably going to benefit from that. But we really have nobody really running away with anything.
Yes.
Because Montreal's dealt with some quarterback injuries.
Mhm.
Fajardo's still out. It sounds like it's Davis Alexander this week again. Galen Evans is out for the season now too, so bring back Dominic Davis to run the short yardage. Like even Montreal, who's clearly on top of the league at this point, even they had their struggles. Ottawa's number 2 in the league standings wise. I mean, who was going to see that coming at the beginning of the season? And then BC and Saskatchewan have kind of cooled off after hot starts. So everything is in play yet. I mean, who would you write off for playoff contention right now?
Edmonton. I mean,
maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, but maybe not yet.
Okay. Well, it's just that's a big hole.
It'll be hard.
A big hole to it.
I'm not going to say it's an easy road here or anything, but I'm not ready to say they're done yet. I mean, they coached themselves into a corner, but they've been doing that for 3 years and finally decided to stop doing that.
Well, I mean, it's one win against the Riders, who are on a 2-3 run now. Okay, so looking back on this might not look quite so bizarre as it did running up 44 points. It might not quite look so bizarre, but I mean, last year the Elks whipped off 4 in a row with Trey Ford as the starter. And they still weren't even sniffing the playoffs at the end of the season. So.
Right, and they were pretty much out of it by October, but they had that.
Yeah, spark, I mean,
and they had some momentum going into late September, early October before it just got figured out and couldn't figure out how to fix it. So
Yeah, so I'm not going to overreact to this one, that's for sure. And again, that's a big hole.
And
I
at
mean,
the same time, I'm not going to sit here and go, nope, they're not. There's no chance of them coming back.
yeah, okay, all right, but yeah, yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Again, Calgary 4-0 at home, 0-4 on the road. We'll see what kind of team they are. I think hopefully in a few more weeks. The other
Nine and
team is
nine.
Hamilton. The other team is Hamilton. If Hamilton loses next week, I think they're done. I think that's it for them. You can't start 2-9. 2-9. If they go undefeated the rest of the way, they'll be 9-9. Come on, come on. That's the. I don't think that's going to cut it this year in the East. So I'd be willing to knock Hamilton off as well. Again, especially if they lose next week. That's you might as well put that X next to them in the standings board, or the Z. Z is eliminated. Yeah, Z.
It depends. On some standings boards, Z means you get a first round bye. So.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever that designation is, the eliminated designation, you might as well give that to them if they start with another loss next week. In any case, all right, let's get into last week's games. Now, this week started with, and again, like apparently most of the teams in our fantasy league, I was bummed out to see what happened to Vernon Adams. I just wanted to mark the occasion. This is now becoming an annual tradition, Joe, in that the week that I start VA, he gets 0.2 points in fantasy football. And this happened exactly last year when he was injured. I had him starting. He got exactly 0.2 points from me. So good for him. I don't know. I felt, were you getting flashbacks during this game, Joe? And I asked
Yep.
this
Very.
not just because, yeah, the Bombers look back to what they have been these past few years, but also because we finally got the bad Vernon that we hadn't seen in a few years that often came out in Montreal. So, what were your impressions on this game? How are you liking your Bombers now?
Well, first of all, everybody can blame Oz for Vernon Adams having zero point 0.2
Right.
points. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that all the hate mail is directed his way, not mine.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It's me.
the flashback I had was the West Final.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
BC scored a few points that game. Didn't score any this past week, but it was the same thing. It felt like, and it is weird because they've already played in Winnipeg this year. They got away with a 2-point win in a game that was close. They should have run away with, and then the Bombers
Right.
made it close. And as was their wont in June and July, just fell short at the end. This time around, no big start. Winnipeg ground them down. Had control of the time of possession. Had control of the game the whole time. It
Oh
just
yeah.
looked like they were smooth sailing the whole way through. When that starts to happen to BC, they tend to try to go for the kill shots. They're looking downfield all the time. They don't play the progression game. They don't play the short game. They don't rely on the running game. I mean, last year you could kind of sort of understand it. You didn't have a superstar quality back there, but yeah, William Stanback back there this year,
Yeah.
and they just basically ignored him until the game was basically over.
Well, too, it was an elimination game last year too.
It was,
So
and there was
yeah.
you could feel the desperation off of them because they had
Right.
done the same thing the year before. Came into Winnipeg with the hot offense. Nathan Rourke was coming back off of an injury, had his worst CFL game by far. Next year, same situation, VA in a big spot. He hasn't been in that spot before. Probably one of his worst games. This game reminded me of those two games where Winnipeg was in control, didn't run away with it until very, very late. Like they kept, BC was still in it because Winnipeg wasn't scoring touchdowns, which has been a problem all season.
Right.
But when they start to stall on offense, it can run away on them and they can have a really awful game. They don't seem to do well trying to shift gears, change the game plan mid game. They don't. If something isn't working, they don't go and say, "Okay, what will?" And this is yet another opportunity in Winnipeg, but all across the board for them to put away the Bombers and move on to a bigger and better things for themselves. How many games is that now? I mean, 2022 might be pushing it because they were up and coming. But last year, they had the Bombers down big at half in Vancouver. Couldn't finish that one off, even though the Bombers kept trying to give them the game. West Final, same situation in Winnipeg. Had a chance to take the next step, put Winnipeg away, move on to bigger and better things, didn't do it. And then this week, I mean, they got Saskatchewan on the ropes. Saskatchewan's just lost to Edmonton, or Saskatchewan was going to lose to Edmonton, but they're down a quarterback. Trevor Harris isn't even going to be back this week. Trevor Harris is going to go the full 6 game, so they had a chance to get a jump on Saskatchewan, get ahead of them in the standings again, and bury Winnipeg, because Winnipeg would have been out of first place contention, assuming anything rational going forward. I mean, this is CFL rational. This happens quite often. But if you're sitting at 2-7, you're not going, okay, we got them right where you want them, right? I mean, 3-6 doesn't feel much better than 2-7. But when the top team in the West is 5-3,
yeah, and they're directly looking up at 4-4.
All of a sudden, that's not insurmountable, especially since Winnipeg's next game is BC.
Right.
So there's an opportunity to play some catch up here. And then they get 2 with Saskatchewan over the Labor Day break. So they're not out of it by any stretch yet. Now, their margin of error is basically 0. But BC had a chance to make it this not even a discussion and just completely were unable to do the job.
Well, unable to do the job. I mean, they didn't even show up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the first quarter was just insanity. Okay, so they have 5 drives, okay? 4 2-and-outs, 1 interception on the first play of the drive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now come on. They come out of the half. They go 3 2-and-outs in the third quarter. I mean, they lost the time of possession there like 10-5. 10 minutes to 5 minutes in that quarter. I mean, come on now. Come on.
Yeah, and they have their defense to thank from the fact that this game could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, but the defense was shagged out.
Yeah, I mean, 25-0 doesn't sound great, but when you don't do anything on offense and make your defense play for 40 minutes in the CFL, you're asking for 50 to be put up on you.
Yeah. I mean, it felt like BC had the ball for about 3 minutes in the first quarter. And they had it for literally like 5 minutes in the third quarter. So it's just like, your defense is out there for 22 minutes in those quarters. I mean, they were shagged out by the fourth. That's why,
and then that's when Brady, that's when you just say, hey, Brady, go take this home.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So, helpless at that point. So, yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you were talking about how BC has problems putting away teams in these games, I mean, yeah, it's a microcosm of what they're doing in the standings. Every time Saskatchewan goes down this season, BC just follows suit. And, this was the 5-game stretch, the 6-game stretch, if you like, when they could have put some
and they're hosting the Grey Cup this year. Where's the sense of urgency here?
Nah. Yeah, this is not a team of urgency.
And it's unfortunate because they are very, very, very talented.
Yes, of course.
Get it.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that they're not able to put the Bombers away for obvious reasons, especially for watching a video. But at some point, you're going to have to grasp this opportunity when they come.
Right. Well, nice game by Winnipeg. if if Saskatchewan and BC keep playing like this, I mean, maybe I'll pencil Winnipeg back into that number 1 seed at about 11-7 in the West.
I'm just happy to get to November, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah,
And then really, to make a bad pun, there was really nothing lucky about this game, even though Lucky Whitehead made an appearance and did
I was
dang
gonna
well.
say, yeah.
Happy to have him back.
Yep. How do you like that? How do you like that? All right, going on. In about the only unsurprising uh, result of the week, Montreal Alouettes 33, Hamilton Tiger Cats 18. I I know I was a bit worried about this, but I forgot to take into account Bo Levy Mitchell's general record against the Alouettes, especially Noel Thorpe coaching Alouette teams. Um, he's only now after this loss, he's only 10-8 career as a starter against Montreal. Probably a worse record than against most other teams in the CFL. Um, can I just glory about this defense? My God,
Sure,
this is
and
awesome.
then we
This
could
is
talk
awesome.
about how quarterbacks like Raheem Cato tend to beat the Bo Levi Mitchell led teams in Montreal. I mean, given all
Well,
your quarterback injuries, get him on the phone.
yeah, but don't you think that was about against Calgary? um, I mean, yeah, I just wanted to, let's go through the roll call again. Tyrese Beverett and Darnell Sankey were fantastic. I wish the CFL would keep track of tackles for a loss because I tried to, actually tally it by hand through the play-by-play, and that got very difficult to do after a while. But I caught at least 3 in the first half by Sankey alone. I mean, these guys were constantly behind the line for the Owls, so kudos to them. I mean, Najee Murray had 10 tackles himself, Bryce Cosby, and again, Kabion Ento with interceptions for the Alouettes. I yeah, yeah, I should have been a bit more confident about that. So in this game, Bo Levy, and later on Taylor Powell, who played against Montreal, I believe, last year for the Ticats, took the L. They were outdone by Davis Alexander, who looked pretty good in his first game as a starter. And for one play, Caleb Evans was awesome. Right? Just nice little floater in for the touchdown there. The 30 is it 39 yards or so. Really nice that he could come in a pinch like that and do that. The bad news is, of course, for his troubles, he tried to run one on third down and got injured for the rest of the season. So sorry to see you go, Caleb. Best of luck, I would say. But Joe, I would like to ask you. I mean, the Alouettes have been speaking for themselves this season. What do we make of Hamilton? Hamilton had just whipped off 2 in a row, seemed to be getting their act together, and then this game where they were just dominated.
I've been asking that question for 2 or 3 years now. What do we make of Hamilton? What we make of Hamilton is that they might need to get a complete clean out going now. I mean, Orlando Steinhauer did step away from the head coaching duties. And we got Scott Milanovich, which, if you look at his record across the years, isn't all that inspiring. Yeah, I know there was a Grey Cup in there, but like 9 and 19 to win the Grey Cup once in a while, right? It's
Right.
the glory and
Right.
beauty of this league.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I just think they don't. It feels like they're directionless. It doesn't feel like they're building anything in particular. They're just kind of
Right.
slapping whatever talent they can find together and putting it out on the field, and that just doesn't fly when you're facing units like Montreal's defense that are just so well put together, complementary pieces that complement each other, coaching that makes the best out of. You can't just slapdash a roster together and call it good. It just doesn't work, and that just kind of feels like the vibe I'm getting from Hamilton. especially when they tried last year to slap more pieces together to try to make one last Grey Cup run at their home stadium. It just kind of crashed and burned.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. I mean, not to glory more about the Alouettes defense, but one of the TSN commentators described this a few weeks ago as a positionless defense. It's not quite that, but the thing about this Alouettes defense is you never know who's blitzing, right? You never know who's coming at the quarterback on any given play, right? That is the strength of their defense. I mean, there were times in this game when they were sending 3-man rushes, and it was just as effective as a 5 or 6-man rush. Just because they didn't know where they were coming from. They like to come from that safety position a lot at the quarterback as well. And you got to be smart, you got to be quick, and you got to be strong. And not all offensive lines are these three things in this league. So again, just really impressed by that Montreal defense. And as I said at the top of the show, I honestly think that one more loss for Hamilton might just finish them off this season. I just can't see them being competitive in this East right now. Okay, so the next game, there is life in Edmonton. Edmonton Elks, who are one of two teams now whose away record is better than their home record, along with Montreal. Edmonton Elks 42 flipping points. Saskatchewan Roughriders 31 in Regina. And again, you start this game with Javon Leake. To say that Leake had a monster game is the understatement of the week here on the Rouge, White, and Blue. Carried for 169 yards, 3 touchdowns. Okay, fair enough, but Justin Rankin, the number 2 running back there. If you combine their stats, I mean, Edmonton got 22 carries for 259 yards. I mean, that's over 11 yards per carry. That's like 11 and a quarter yards per carry. And as was said during this telecast a few times, this team was number 1 against the run. They were allowing something like 40 fewer points than the number 2 defense, which I believe is Montreal, against the run. I mean, wow. What happened here? I mean, did Edmonton figure Saskatchewan out?
Short answer on that is yes.
Okay.
Ben Grant wrote a really good piece for 3 Down that described how they were able to get league free.
Okay.
Because when you have 2 guys with the speed of Trey Ford and Javon Leake in the backfield,
right?
If you can get the defense on one and have the other one be unaccounted for, that's going to be a problem for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Ford did have a nice game on the ground. Even without his long run, he was still averaging 6 yards per carry. So,
yep. And
nice.
He was judicious with it. He didn't. So much growth.
Right.
From one season to another.
Mm-hmm.
I could see, because I caught this game the next day instead of as it was happening. Mm-hmm. So I was able to slow it down. I was able to take a look. You could just tell the game was moving slower for him. The decisions were crisp. He didn't take it down and run at the first sign of trouble. I mean, if starting the season the way they did, having McLeod Bethel Thompson in place for as many games as he was in place for, if that's the price Edmonton fans pay for Trey Ford achieving his potential, I think they would pay that any day of the week. Mm-hmm. We're a long way from that point yet, but you could even hear the TSN commentators going on and on about how much Trey Ford was learning from McLeod Bethel Thompson, which if you weren't winning the Grey Cup this year anyway, and you get yourself a quarterback of the future out of the deal, I think you're taking that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were
Yeah,
raving right before the long touchdown pass too. It was
yes,
just like this is like a perfect setup to that.
right. Right. That's just what I was going to say is that I like how he's doing it all ways. He's being surgical about this. Oh, you're gonna give Tevin Jones that hole out there in the deep field. Great, I'll hit him. You know. Oh, you're gonna give me the gap. Okay, I'll take it. That's what I liked about this. And they got some other decent individual performances as well. It was pretty wild because the Riders put together 4 touchdowns in this game, but
Yeah, and
after
Shea Patterson looked good too.
yes.
It's that's the quiet part of this game was that
Mhm.
the Saskatchewan offense looked pretty good too. I mean, sure, Edmonton's defense, but you're on your backup quarterback. You'll take 31 points off of that situation, right?
Mhm.
Just happened to be that Edmonton came out with a hell of a game plan, one that nobody'd seen because Javon Leake's not the starting running back. They made it work. They found a way to take what Saskatchewan does well and use it against them. And when you do that, you're going to win a lot of football games.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at these numbers after the game, a couple of days afterwards, in preparation for this show, and I was just saying, really, the Riders put together 31 points, but you know, the thing is, look, after that opening touchdown by Mario Alford, who also had one called back in week 1, by the way. Uh, after that, um, the Elks outscored these guys by 18 points. I mean, this was supposed to be the number 1 team in the West. This was supposed to be the best run game in the league, best run defense in the league, and it was just like, wow. It wasn't quite BC level of not showing up, but I mean, honestly, it didn't look that close to me. And yet, after the third quarter, it was 21-20. And this is what doesn't give me confidence in the Elks going forward. You know, the penalties, the missing the kick on or the punt on the return, the crazy turnovers. I mean, they kept the run back by Alford, plus some really key mistakes by the Elks, kept the Riders in this game for 3 quarters when they could have been blowing them out. you know so this is what concerns me. If I were an Elks fan, I would still be probably seeing the dark cloud instead of the silver lining here, because you wonder
Oh
about the
no! If you were an Elks fan, you'd be like, holy
well,
crap, we
yeah,
just
yeah,
won, and
yeah,
Trey Ford looks
okay,
good.
fair enough.
Everything I've been saying since preseason is validated.
Actually, yes, you are correct. If I'm looking at it objectively, I'm still worried about this
Yes, but
dark
give
cloud.
them this week; they deserve it.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. All right. Now, finally, here was another WTF game for you. Calgary Stampeders 28, Toronto Argonauts 24. My God, what a collapse.
That's the only way
What?
you could put it.
Oh my God. Okay. This game for 3 quarters was, I don't want to say all Argos, because this was a sloppy game. This was a wonky game. I mean, there were 18 penalties total in this game. Um, there were the yards per attempt by both quarterbacks was under 7.5. Okay. Cameron Dukes was under 7 yards per attempts in this game. Okay. But it all came down to the seeming willingness of the Argos defense in the fourth quarter to let Calgary do whatever they want. I mean, come on. In the passing game, they're 8 of 10 for 132 yards and 21 points. Come on now. And technically, you can throw on, a little bit more, because they had one rush that was for 9 yards, which was actually one of these behind the line of scrimmage passes. So, they're letting these guys throw for 140 yards in a quarter. I mean, like, what happened to the Argos here in the fourth? Do you have answers? Because
Nope.
I don't.
And Ryan Dinwiddie better find some fast.
Uh-huh. 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 Okay. All right. It's because we agreed last week that Ottawa is for real.
Yes, we
Right?
did.
Okay. Right. So Toronto's got to do something here. Okay. This Stamps thing isn't sustainable, is it?
No.
I mean, undefeated at home?
No.
I mean, they can't. Okay. Well, you're biased too, because you need them to fall off as a Winnipeg fan.
Well, Winnipeg does have the tiebreaker, so not really.
Okay. Okay.
If Winnipeg
Yep.
does what they're capable of, Calgary shouldn't be a concern.
Okay. Yeah, right now, but wait till they
have
wait
they
till, wait till
they
they go
done
to
that
Calgary.
this year? No.
Right. It's still a pretty low offense. But I'll tell you what, I can't imagine collapsing like this.
No.
I can't imagine this. These guys, you can understand why there's talk about Chad Kelly. I mean, morals and ethics aside, I mean, this is just getting worse and worse on this offense here. And that was the stunning thing too. It wasn't the offense that killed them this week. It was just that fourth quarter by the defense. I don't know what happened.
But the offense kept going 2 and out too. Like the offense wasn't helping at all.
Well, that's the thing though, that we've seen this slowly build up the past few weeks, right? Their teams know how to play Calgary, right? You give them that short yardage pass, you give them that West Coast offense pass all day. It doesn't matter. They're not going to get it past, right? 8 yards per attempt, right? They can't top that, right? So you let them have that. You cover your man. That's it. That's it. I mean, I saw in one of these games where in one of these fourth quarter completions where, the receiver had beaten his man. I think it was Bagleton, had beaten his man. And the guy playing the zone on him was a step and a half too slow. Pretty easy completion. I mean, normally against Calgary, you cover that, right? You have that covered because nobody's scared of this offense. So I don't know what happened to the Argos. They must have thought they had it in the bag. At what was it, 24 to 3? No, it had to have been 24-7 to start that fourth quarter. So, anyway, okay. Want to talk next week's games. I want to talk about our sponsor very quickly, Royal Retros at royalretros.com. This is a nice one-stop online shop for retro memorabilia. Baseball caps, jerseys, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, hoodies, jackets, and the proverbial and always scintillating more. Royal Retro has the gear and paraphernalia representing dozens of teams from the USFL, Arena Football League, World Football League, XFL, Football Canada. They got some nice Football Canada stuff. Various pro hockey leagues, some really great Hartford Whalers stuff there, for example. Leagues including the WHA, the ABA, and of course those defunct major leagues in baseball. Let's see. What else can I say? Oh, yes, of course. How could I forget? Best of all, get the 10% off anything in the store when you use promo code RWBCFL. That's Rouge, White, Blue Canadian Football League at checkout. RoyalRetros.com. Enter promo code enter promo code RWBCFL. Sorry, this is proof that we're recording this live, folks.
Mm-hmm.
RWBCFL for 10% off at royalretros.com. Okay. All right. Let's talk next week's games. Obviously, the bookmakers were also paying attention to the standings table this week because we have a 4-game slate. in which the home team is the favorite in all 4 games, which, if it goes that way, means that the top 3 in the East gets 3 more wins. So, wow. This topsy-turvy world of the CFL, this is the first time the East has been better than the West in forever. It continues. Riders, 3-point underdogs at the Red Blacks. Okay. Trevor Harris, as Joe mentioned, apparently will not play, even though he's been a full participant in practice this week.
Well, this is game 6 of the 6-game injured list.
Right.
So if they pull him off a game early, they lose all that salary cap relief. So if you've gone this long,
right, okay,
and Shea Patterson's doing well, why not?
Well, okay. Yeah, there's still 2 and 3 on the board with Patterson as quarterback, but okay. So the bookmakers are finally respecting the Red Blacks. The Riders, like I keep reiterating, 2 and 3 run. What do you like here, Joe? I'm a bit hesitant on this game. What do you think?
I like Ottawa defending home turf. It's a different Ottawa team this year.
Okay.
Like there's a belief there that it wasn't there for the past 5 years. There's a talent level. They've had talent. It was one of those situations where they were doing the Hamilton thing and just like, oh, talent here, talent here, talent here. How do we make this work now?
Right. This roster has had holes on it for the past few years. They've had some studs, but yeah, they've had some. Filling those gaps, so to speak, has been not always easy.
Yeah, they've fixed up their offensive line pretty well this year.
Yeah,
and it shows.
Yep.
Because you got a young American running back that hasn't played in this league before that looks pretty dang good behind that line. That means you're doing something right. You got Drew Brown, who's in his first full year as being anybody's starter. He's doing pretty darn well too. I mean, he's had the big explosion game. Most of his games are a lot more tame, but he's in control of that offense. And it's been a while since Ottawa had a quarterback that looked like they were in control of the offense.
Yeah.
I mean, the couple of games have been solely sure, but they still weren't winning games at that point.
And that receiving,
you can almost go back to Trevor Harris at this point and go, that's the last time a quarterback's had control of that offense and knows how to make it go.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. I lost my thought there.
I think you were going to go on and on about the receivers, which
yeah, right.
Too.
That's what I was going to say. Pound for pound, I mean, this receiving core is probably the best in the league. I mean, they're top 4, even against BC. You can put that top 4 against BC. And, so nice to be in control of that kind of offense. They do have a lot of talent in Ottawa. Okay, I'll take Ottawa. I'll take Ottawa.
Saskatchewan's pretty beat up, too, right now, too. I believe Jameer Thurman's on the 6th game now, so.
Mm-hmm. Right, yep, right.
They've lost some offensive line depth. They had a retirement. They're having some problems keeping people healthy and on the field.
Right. And the league apparently has been given the blueprint to beating this run defense. So
yes, have 2 guys that can sprint really, really, really fast going the opposite directions and guess which one has the ball. Actually, that should be just about every team.
Right. You could do that. Yeah. All right. So next one. Now this line I really don't understand given the records, but Calgary Stampeders, just 1-point underdog at Toronto. I feel like this is kind of a question of, which team do you have less confidence in rather than more confidence in? I mean, the book is basically making this a pick-em, despite the fact that the Stamps haven't won on the road all this season. Despite the fact that just last week, the Stamps offense couldn't do anything against this defense for 3 quarters. So I don't know what to make of this line very much. I will probably... Can the Stamps really go 0-5 on the road? Is
Yes,
Winnipeg playing this week? No, they are not.
I made my picks beforehand.
Okay. What are you gonna go? What are you gonna?
I'm
I'll
going
take the
Toronto.
opposite.
I'm
You're
going
going
Toronto.
Toronto. Okay.
I think they're going to be pissed off after that fourth quarter. If Ryan Dinwiddie's the coach I think he is, and I've been pretty supportive of Dinwiddie, at least on the field, he's going to have shown that fourth quarter about 5 times and go on. I never
Yeah.
want to see that again.
Yeah. Yeah. This is true. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good
And
point
then,
to make.
and then we have the book on Calgary. They're going to know what they did wrong in the fourth quarter. They have 3 quarters to go back on and say this worked. Why didn't it work in the fourth quarter and be able to fix it? So
Yeah. That's a good point. I just said that I would take the opposite of Joe, so I will take the Stamps. But folks, listen to Joe on this one. I was 1-3 and pick 'em last week, so just go with Joe's picks. Lately, I'm brutal at this. I'm happy I'm not actually betting. I'm not losing money this past few weeks because whoa, I cannot pick these games. Okay, here's another one. Here's another one I'm really wrestling over. Okay, Tie Cats, Hamilton Tiger Cats, 7.5 point underdogs at Montreal.
So
I got a
what are you
bad feeling.
wrestling with? The spread?
Yeah, but I mean, just in general, I have a bad feeling about this game. Like I said pretty early in the season, I'm going to pick Montreal probably in every game for the record on CFL Pick'em over at CFL.ca Game Zone. But I have a bad feeling about this. I mean, you got to really the key to picking at Pick'em or the key to making money at the sportsbook is just guessing the upsets. And I don't know. I've just had a bad feeling about this since the preseason when I was looking at the schedule about this game. But I'm going to go Montreal. I think just to, soothe my anxiety, maybe I'll cover Tie Cats plus 7.5 at the book just to make myself feel better if Montreal loses or even if it's too close. But yeah, I'll take Montreal. Sure.
Yeah, I'm taking Montreal, and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't have to. Your team's on bye. Right. Okay, so final game, all West. Now, I like this one. This point spread would have seemed impossible like a couple of weeks ago. BC Lions, 1.5 point underdogs at Edmonton. Okay. So this is a 1-win team, against the top team in the West, right? 1.5 point favorites in Edmonton. Wow. Okay. First question: do we know about Vernon Adams yet? We're recording
Yeah,
this
he's
on
not playing.
Wednesday
He's not
night.
playing.
He's not playing. Okay, so that
It's
explains
a
this
week
line.
to week injury. We didn't even cover this during the reviewing the game because we had so many other tangents to go off on. But yeah, he's week to week with a knee injury. They're saying week to week as opposed to maybe this season, so that's good news. I don't think he's on the 6th game or anything like that. But Jake Dolagala gets a start this week.
Okay.
That might be part of the reason why Edmonton's a favorite here.
Uh-huh.
I don't
Uh-huh.
look at the lines before we come and talk here,
Right.
but I had Edmonton because
Okay.
they got a spark and BC got a couple of pieces of downer news this past
Yeah.
week between the Adams injury and the big loss in Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Edmonton's got the momentum right now. They'll probably find a way to put up some more points. It'll take a few weeks for the league to figure out how to take care of this current Edmonton offense, but it'll happen. Just might not be right away. And with the way the Lions seem to handle adversity or the lack thereof sometimes, and playing with their backup quarterback, I could see them stepping in a puddle here.
I mean, for me, the matchup of the game is, the number one receiver against the Edmonton against the BC secondary. BC pass defense has never been has not been awesome this year. They've given up a lot of points against the pass. A lot of that is stemmed from, and this happens to pass defenses. If your team is capable of scoring 30, 35 points a game, which up until last week, Edmonton BC had been just below 30 points per game. They're at 29.5 or something like this points per game. If you have an offense like this, you tend to go for the big play on defense, right? You tend to go for the big pick or, the tackle for a loss or whatever, and sometimes you get burned. Okay, fair enough. I want to see how the BC defense responds if they're assuming that Jake Delagawa is not capable of putting up the huge numbers that Adams is. That's what I'm going to be looking at here. But you make a good point, Joe. Edmonton is the hot team here, and that goes a long way toward explaining this 1.5 points. So,
and the home team, and BC's got the backup quarterback, and there's a lot of other reasons. Really, what I'm looking for is there's the non-bomber hat wearing, bomber flag in the background, bomber shirt wearing guy that I am. Like, just the football fan in me wants BC to just step up and say, okay, had a bad week last week. Let's go wreck some stuff in Edmonton and show everybody that we're still the team that people thought we were.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen a lot of that this year. I haven't seen they like to come out hot usually, start off pretty well, and just I want to see them just dominate for a while because I think they got the talent level to be capable of that. I think that's like, and it's really funny given I'm again sitting here as a Bomber fan going, I'd like to see BC go off but as a new, if I take out the Bomber fan hat, I think they're capable of it. I'm looking forward to it if it actually does happen here.
Yeah, as a CFL fan, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Look, as a CFL fan, right? Why do we want Trey Ford to play, right? Because he's exciting, right? He's an exciting player, right? He's a hustling player. Why have the Riders, penalties aside, been a lot of fun to watch this year? Because, they're a lot of fun. They're playing with exuberance, right? They're playing with elan, right? Of course, as a fan, you want BC to be spinning the scoreboard because they have a lot of outstanding players on offense. Vernon Adams, all year people have been expecting him to have the MOP season, to have these gaudy statistics, which have kind of petered off this last 2-3 weeks a little bit. So, we like this. This is exciting as a fan. And of course, that Montreal defense. Now, the problem with your picks this week, Joe, is that you have the 4 home teams, right? And after talking all that smack at the beginning of the episode, it's like, I don't know. I want to fade these home teams a little bit.
I'm glad I made my pick before I heard that because I'd be questioning.
Home team has got to start losing here at some point. So I feel like at least one of these.
Or do they?
Oh my God! The return of Rod Black. Oh my God! I think that's enough for this show, Joe. You just killed it right there. All right, we're ready to wrap. Regardless, I think. I don't know. Do you got any closing thoughts, Joe?
No, I mean, it was a good week to be a Bomber fan. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And if the picks go the way I think they're going to go, it'll be another good week for that.
Oh yeah. Could be a bad week for the West. The Western fans will have an excuse to be watching that Calgary-Toronto game. Maybe even that Montreal-Hamilton game. Because if Montreal loses, that's going to put a monkey wrench into things too. Right. So, ready for another crazy week in the CFL. This has been the Rouge, White, and Blue CFL podcast. My name's Oz Davis. For my co-host, Joe Pritchard. We are out of here. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.